Seneca Village, the forgotten community. Of all the landmarks in New York City, perhaps none is so famous as Central Park. Located within those boundaries, there once stood an early African-American community called Seneca Village. Why it was called Seneca Village, one does not know. It is generally thought that there is a direct connection to the Seneca Indians, a nation made up of Indians from other tribes who came into formal existence in 1848. Other theories existed too. Because many slaves came from the shores of Senegal, West Africa, the Seneca Village name could have been a derivative of that. Seneca was also thought to have been a code word for the Underground Railroad. New York City in the 1800s was rapidly growing into an ethnic and crowded city. It soon began to be carved boards, and the color soon followed. Because African Americans were subjected to the worst housing conditions in the downtown neighborhoods, those with the financial means jumped at the chance to move to an open, airy, and rural space in northern Manhattan.
Mother Zion got it started in 1796 as an independent black church in New York City, the only black church in New York City at the time.
To uncover some of the reality, we need to look more closely at a particular park settlement known as Seneca Village. The densely settled area between 82nd and 88th Streets and 7th and 8th Avenues had at least 3 times as many people per block as the rest of the park. Atypical in its racial composition and its length of settlement, it deserves close scrutiny both because it was the largest of the park settlements with more than 1/6 of the area's residents, and because its story contests what we have been led to believe about the pre-park era.
Mother Zion was the only church of color for black people. The masses of black people gravitated to it. And so we had a lot of the stars in the black community that we hold in high regard today. We were members of the church. Frederick Douglass, who when he was running away as the slaves, lived in Mother Zion Church for about 15 days. And Sojourner Truth, who was a member of the church, in fact, she was a part of that crowd when she came to New York. She was a part of the crowd of black folk who was at John Street, and it was in the John Street Church where she met, where she rediscovered members of her family who were sold off in slavery, who were members of John Street when she came to New York. Yes.
In 1825, a cartman, John Whitehead, and his wife Elizabeth began selling off parcels of the farmland they owned, which lay roughly between 83rd and 88th Streets and 7th and 8th Avenues. The first purchaser was a young African-American man named Andrew Williams, who purchased 3 lots for $125. Epiphany Davis, a black laborer and a trustee of the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church, purchased 12 lots that same day. Soon after, the AME Zion bought 6 lots. And as you know, the AME Zion had been organized in New York in 1796, had been described as the largest and wealthiest church of the colored people in New York at the time, and perhaps the largest in the country.
Many of the members who were members of Mother Zion at the time were buried in that place. And that's the connection between the African burial ground, Mother Zion, and Seneca Village, I would say, because many of the, indeed all of the blacks or Africans in New York City at the time were buried in the African burial ground. Because all of that downtown at that time was, as you move closer to the waterfront, were black folk. There was no, most of the white folk in New York lived uptown, in Harlem, and etc., but that was mainly black folk downtown, in the Wall Street area.
Seneca Village, reflecting the virulent racism of the day, was known as Nigger Village. But as the neighborhood more than doubled in population, its composition changed. By 1855, when at least 264 people lived there, Irish Americans made up about 30% of the community. Seneca's white population generally faced the same contempt leveled at their black neighbors. The commingling of whites and blacks sparked fears and fantasies of miscegenation, the interbreeding of races.
At that time, they would not sell a corner piece of property to black folk. So the oral tradition, the oral history of the church, you can't document this anywhere because it's not in the history book, but the oral tradition from some of the members of the church has said that inasmuch as they would not sell the property to black.
Were the residents of Seneca the wretched and debased as observers described? The origins of the village in purchases from the Whitehead tract, as well as in the earlier settlement at York Hill, suggest that this community had unusual stability. Some black residents had deep roots, and at least 9 individuals could trace their ties back more than 2.5 decades. The humble dwellings of Seneca Village residents. The word accurately families living downtown in cellars, attics, or tenement rooms. We know about the length residence of so many. It also seems unlikely that their shanty